Hello everybody, it's Clara from Wild Book Garden, and today I'm here to talk about my favorite science fiction books that I read in 2023. I am splitting my favorites up by genre this year, as I did before, and I'm going to link the playlist of my end of year content, and I only have 4 books to talk about, but as with what happened last year, when I talked about my favorite science fiction, it's like I don't read a ton of science fiction, but when I do, I tend to be really good at picking ones I'll enjoy. Also, as with many of my favorites videos, if you remember my ratings for these books, I stand by them, and I also stand by this order, even though it is not in order of start reading. That's just how I go. Anyway, let's get into it. Content warnings will be in the description, as well as other links, and you might be getting some like cozy rain sounds right now, so hopefully you enjoy that. I always do. Okay, so starting off with number 4, I have the Wild Robot series by, I think Peter Brown is the author. This is a trilogy that I actually read, or I think it's a complete trilogy, I'm not sure, but I read it for a vlog project, which I will link below, and this is a very like highly reviewed series that is a middle grade series about a robot. Her name is Roz. She ends up waking up like on this island, and she's the only robot who survived this like journey, and there's just a bunch of animals here, and so it's about her kind of like making friends with the animals and like learning more about her island and about herself, and it's lovely and cozy, but it also has a lot of really great things to say about the environment and also about community and taking care of each other. The trilogy as a whole I think is really, really well done, and I love Roz as a main character, and I feel like this series is a great example of how you can have like a very warm and like tender and like cozy series that is also appropriate for children, while still having important things to say, and still having like a good, like an honest examination of issues, you know? So yeah, this was great. Some of the friendships and found family relationships are so beautiful. Yeah, just definitely recommend that one, like I know a lot of other people do. Number 3 on my list, I have Doomsday Book by Connie Willis, and this one I could have put either in science fiction or historical fiction because it's sort of half and half. It is a time travel book, and one half of the book takes place in this future. It's not too terribly far in the future, but we do have time travel technology at that point, humans do, and there are certain time periods that are like forbidden to time travel to because of how dangerous they are, and one of those is I think it's the entire like 14th century, if I remember correctly, but then one day this guy in this department at a college, he gets the bright idea that because he has temporarily been placed in charge of the time travel department, that he's going to make a name for himself by sending a time traveler back to that century for the first time. And there are some people who are really against this, who think it's really dangerous, but Kieran, the young woman, the student who he is like sending back, she's really excited about it. She's very passionate about this time period, and she's been doing a lot of preparation for it. She's gotten like her vaccinations and everything, and she's been doing all of this work with like language, and like this is what she does for her studies, and so she's very excited to get to see this firsthand. She feels like she's prepared for the danger, and she goes back in time, and of course things almost immediately do not go how they're supposed to, and so Kieran is trying to just, you know, survive, and she ends up becoming really enmeshed in like this community, this specific family, and like getting to know this family and like the people around her, like this community, and it's also about her trying to get back to her own time. She's making these recordings of like what she is seeing and what she's learning, hoping that she is going to be able to get back to her time and also share this knowledge, and then the present day timeline is like her like colleagues and friends, some of them, who are trying to get Kieran back. They're trying to figure out exactly what went wrong with her trip into the past and get her back. And also there seems to be these 2 linked plagues that are happening in both time periods. So it is very much a plague book, just so everyone's aware. I feel like because of how different some elements of this one were, it was almost like cathartic, because like I'm still not reading many pandemic books. I don't really anticipate being able to do that in the near future, but this one I thought like really, really worked for me, and it's such an interesting kind of story. Like the writing is such an interesting choice to me because it's very well written and very like compelling, even though this is very quiet and slice of life and very character focused in the past chapters. Like if you're like a science fiction reader who hates historical fiction, I don't know if you would really love this book, because half of it basically reads like a historical, but I really like historical fiction, and I also I feel like the science fiction elements and the time travel elements were used in a way that I found really interesting, as somebody who doesn't read a lot of sci-fi. And what I was saying about the writing is that, like, it's almost not distant exactly, but like the like communicating of these really sad or really intense or really stressful things, it's told in a way that doesn't draw your attention to the emotion of it. And at first that kind of threw me off a little bit, but as the story went, I kind of started feeling like that was intentional and that was actually a strength of the writing, because I feel like part of what this story is doing is, like, it's just about how humans, like, we survive, you know, we try and take care of each other. It's about how people don't always have time to stop and grieve even when they should, because they're trying to take care of other people, they're trying to survive themselves. And so I think that is maybe intentional, and I thought that was just very interesting. Even though with that kind of distance, there is still a lot of heavy stuff in this book. There were some parts that were very hard to read, but I think it was handled very well, and I did really care about Kieran as a main character. And another thing that I think made the writing work for me is that I think it balanced out how heavy some of the material and events of the book was. So I felt like it really worked. Like, I do still think there were places where we maybe should have had a little more emphasis on, like, the impact of these losses or of these events. But in general, I thought this was really, really compelling, really well done, and I'm definitely excited to read more by Connie Willis. Number 2, I have The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. I am so glad that Olivia Savannah picked this for one of her episodes on my Not a Genre book club series, because I had gone back and forth about whether to try this series for a long time. It's a very polarizing one, but I loved it. And I said in my wrap-up that, like, the thing that I had always heard about this book was, like, the setup, which is that it is set on this other planet that humans have colonized, and that when they got there, there was this, like, disease outbreak that killed all the women of the colony, and it gave the men and boys of the colony this, I guess it's like an ability, but, like, they can't turn it off. It's always happening, where they could hear each other's thoughts, which they call the noise, and it's just everywhere, constantly, all the time. And we're following our main character, who is a boy named Todd, who is right around, like, 13, which is when his community considers him to be a man, so he's kind of at that, like, transitional phase, and he ends up stumbling across a place where there is complete silence, and everything takes off. And, like, that is the premise I had always heard, and I think that is a good premise, like a good description of this book. That is true, and it is interesting, but also that is not what I think the main strength of this book is, which is that it is a really scathing critique of toxic masculinity, which I thought was fantastic. Like, I would have picked this book up so much sooner if I had, like, known that was a thematic focus. Yeah, I also think this book is, like, a masterclass in how you can have a book where there is, like, a group of people, or even, like, a main character who is very, like, deeply enmeshed in, like, a certain kind of, like, prejudice or, like, way of thinking that hurts people, and yet the writing around it is done in such a way that the book is commenting on it. Like, it's not just, like, replicating the bad things, because I think Todd is a great example of that, because I loved and felt for him so much. Like, I think he is very believable as a kid who has grown up in this incredibly misogynistic environment, because there are things that he has to unlearn. There are prejudices he has about girls, because I don't think this is a spoiler, he does end up meeting a female character, several actually, but one in particular who's very important, and we see Todd really confronted with his own sexism and have to, like, unlearn that and work on that. So he is believable in the way that he has these beliefs, these, like, prejudices, but also we see even from the beginning that underneath that he is a good person, and he is already questioning things. Like, he knows, like, well, I've been taught to believe this, so I guess that's the case, but also that doesn't seem to be true from, like, what I'm experiencing right now. And so things like that, I just think were done very, very well in this book. I loved Todd, as I said. I also loved Viola, who is one of our other main characters. Like, she's not the narrator, but she is an important main character. And I think that she was really, really well characterized, especially considering that we do not get point of view chapters from her. And also considering that she is very specifically meant to be, like, the only female character that, like, Todd has ever met, basically, apart from his mother, who he doesn't really remember. And so, like, it would have been very easy, I think, for another author to write her in a way that like she's the girl, you know, like that's her whole personality, and it's not. And I loved Viola. I really loved her and Todd's growing like friendship and relationship and learning to rely on each other and care about each other. I do feel like the plot was a little repetitive. I mentioned in my wrap up that like there's a lot of like running away and getting caught, running away and getting caught, and like yes, I would have liked the book better if that wasn't like the structure, because I'm not a fan of road trip stories, but even with that, I loved this book so much because I cared so deeply about these characters, and I was so invested in what was going to happen to them, and I was so impressed by the way that Patrick Ness handles these themes of like sexism and masculinity and like gender and like guilt, responsibility. Like it does so much. I'm so excited to continue the series. I will say that like I had been warned many times about a very sad part in this book, and I thought I was prepared, and I was not. It was even worse than I expected. So like definitely check content warnings for any of these books if you need them. But I thought it was masterfully done. I'm definitely looking forward to reading the rest of the series and getting my heart just absolutely stomped on. And then finally, number 1 on my list is arguably a contemporary, but I feel like the science fiction element is significant enough to the story that I can put it in this category. Also, my channel, my rules. So my number 1 science fiction book that I read in 2023 is The Eternal Return of Clara Hart by Louise Finch. And every time I mention this book, I have to like say a giant thank you to Aoife from Words of Clover, because I had not heard of this book until her review, and I loved it. This is yet another book that uses science fiction to talk about toxic masculinity and sexism and rape culture, and I think it does it so well. We are following our main character, who is this teenage boy. I think this is set in the UK, and he ends up in a time loop where he gets up, he goes to school, afterwards he goes to this party, and this girl who he kind of knows but not very well, named Clara Hart, she ends up dead. And this is obviously very traumatic. It's a tragedy for like their whole community and everything. And then the next day he wakes up and the exact same things happen again. And so we are following him, trying to figure out why he is in this time loop, trying to get out of it, but also trying to finally save Clara. Like he's not sure why this is happening to her specifically, but he wants to help her. He wants to stop this. And again, like the thematic things that this book does, I think are so fantastic. And again, we have like a very interesting and compelling story. Like there is it's almost like a mystery trying to figure out like how he can help Clara. And I think that the way this book handles sexism and misogyny and again toxic masculinity and how that hurts everybody, like the way that it handles it, I feel like does a really good job of like, we are following a male main character who at the beginning of the book kind of sucks. Like he's not a great person necessarily, but I feel like throughout the book we really see him like change and become better in a way that feels organic, and also kind of like with Todd, although definitely not as nice as Todd, but similarly to Todd, I feel like we have enough indications that he has like a good heart, a good moral compass underneath all these like layers of misogyny and like, you know, things that he's grown up believing or just being too lazy to question in some cases. And I feel like the way that we see him start to notice it and start to get angry about it, I think is really well written and satisfying. Because sometimes you read books where there's a protagonist who's like learning to not be bigoted, and it's like excruciating. It's like, yes, people are people. Thanks for joining the club, you know? And I feel like with this one, it's one of the ones I have read where like it feels very well written, and it feels like it is done in a way that isn't like male gaze-y, even though it is about things like the male gaze. I don't know if any of that made sense, but yeah, I loved this one. It is my favorite science fiction book I read last year. I would highly recommend it, and again, it is very underhyped. I don't think a lot of people know about it, so hopefully if it sounds interesting to you, you do give it a try. And yeah, even though there were only 4 books, I apparently had a lot to say about all of them. Those were my 4 favorite science fiction books that I read in 2023. Not necessarily that came out that year. In fact, I don't think any of them did. Maybe one of the Wild Robot books did, I'm not sure. But yeah, let me know if you have read any of these, what you thought. Let me know if you're gonna pick any of them up if you're interested. Let me know a science fiction book that you've read and loved, especially if it is one like Doomsday Book or The Eternal Return of Clara Hart, especially if it's one where it's like it is science fiction, or there is like a significant element of sci-fi, but there's also like another primary genre. Like, you know, Doomsday Book, I think, reads a lot like a historical fiction in some places, or like in half of it, really. And then The Eternal Return of Clara Hart feels very much like a contemporary, except that there is this like time travel, time loop element. Yeah, also another thing I wanted to mention is that I was a little worried that a story about a time loop would be very boring and repetitive in some places, and it wasn't at all. I think Louise Finch did an incredible job of like knowing what things to skim over or to focus on or to show us different pieces of a scene. So yeah, that was great too. Anyway, I'm losing my voice. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!